Ooh.
Woohoo. Yeah, we're up. So let me see who is. Okay, so let me. Whoops, I did that wrong. And oh, there we go. All right, so we can see who's here. Alrighty. So yeah, we'll just wait a couple more minutes, kind of for a few more people to come.
Absolutely.
And then we will begin our. Oh, we'll continue our chat.
Exactly. Not quite like being at Epcot Center, but close.
Right? Oh my gosh, I was so thinking that today. I was like, I was going to mention that. I was like, talk about us taking it networking to the next level. Eh? Not only do we do our Wednesday morning breakfast, which, well, not right now.
Right.
Yeah, we've done Epcot on Christmas, and now we're doing Sunday mornings from our basements. Like
exactly.
This is, yeah, like we deserve like gold stars.
Do we ever?
I'm going to put that out there next when we eventually get back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that'll
sure
be, yeah, not really sure when that's going to be.
No. So I was laughing. I had a bit of a panic attack. So Maggie and her hockey team are doing, every now and then we'll do these Zoom meetings with a group of them so that they can still kind of chat and stuff. So
right.
I logged her in. They were doing it at 7:00 last night and I didn't come back to the computer. So I turned it on this morning and there's some way in Zoom that you can do like video effects and all this other stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I logged in this morning and my video was all of these like strange like outer space effects and there were spaceships and
it's like, what is Gail having me do today? Yeah.
Well, no, I knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I knew it was Maggie.
That's awesome.
So I'm like shaking her to wake her up and so I didn't do anything. So I finally figured it out, but
thank God, right? Thank God.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Selma. Oh, look at that. Selma's saying good morning to the two of us. Good morning, Selma.
I saw that.
Oh, you can get that.
I can see that too.
See, this is so good morning to everyone that's joined us. Thank you for tuning in this morning, Sunday morning from comfort of our home. So last week I did my first one solo where I talked to myself for about 45 minutes, which didn't realize I could talk that long. Well, yes, I did. But so this morning we've got Bill on. And so this is the first time I've done one with somebody else. So, which is pretty cool. So if I kind of seem surprised as we go along, this is why. So this is awesome. Absolutely. So I'm just going to start just before I introduce Bill. Bill's our chartered accountant. I'm just going to recap a few things that we had talked about last week. Some people had asked questions at the end of the week. So I thought, you know what, if for the people that are here or the people that aren't, I'll just kind of answer some of those too. One of the ones we had talked about was what was going to happen for clients with property taxes. And I thought that was based on municipalities. I'd even suggested to some clients, you know, give the city a call. Maybe they're doing some sort of deferral program. Maybe they're not. It turns out Hamilton is not. It's kind of status quo. We're going as is. And I did have another client I was speaking to yesterday who's in Oakville. We were texting a little bit yesterday. And I think Oakville is still status quo as well. We were saying if you're 65 or older or on some sort of benefits, there's a bit of some relief, but I think that's on a regular going basis. I don't think that's based on anything new with the pandemic. So I think that's where we are with property taxes. But I also think with Burlington, I haven't heard anything about Burlington either, but, and of course, nobody's at the cities, like naturally, because nobody's anywhere, right? So, but Burlington's actually being pretty good at replying quickly to clients' emails, because I've had a few clients have to email them, and it was propertytax@burlington.ca, and they've literally got answers within a couple hours. So that's been pretty good. So that's what I know about property taxes. I think with condo fees, if you're in a condo, I don't think there's any deferral on those because it's business as usual, especially if you're in a condo building, and probably even ramped up, right? Like, because now you've got more people cleaning, in a little bit more, and more expenses and such. So that's what I think we've seen with the condo corps anyhow. The other thing, I was listening this morning, was a gentleman, I've talked about him before. He's a large broker. He's from BC, actually. He's now president of one of our mortgage companies. He was talking this morning and gave us a little bit of stats. One of the stats is that they're seeing between 400,000 to 500,000 people have actually deferred their mortgage payments in the last like 2 weeks. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So wait times, as you can imagine, kind of thing, are just pretty incredible to get through to the lenders. Nobody is built for this, like nobody. And especially when the government made their announcement that they're changing it. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts calling and emailing, and everybody's frustrated, naturally, right? So the biggest frustration is with the emails that are going through is that they're not getting a reply. And one of the lenders, I don't know which one, said they've got about 30,000 sitting in the inbox that, because they don't have a department to manage these. Like, so they've scattered everybody to home. It's not like there was one particular department that was able to handle all this. So there's been a lot of upset. And now we've just passed April 1st, which some people make mortgage payments on the 1st of the month. So, so people are stressed. Like maybe they've had their payments being, went back NSF, or maybe they put in the request for the deferral, but they've still taken the payment. What's happening in that case? So what we're saying is, because you've documented it kind of thing, they will reimburse you kind of thing. So, and if you do call and you're getting frustrated with the lenders, they're saying people are, not so nice kind of thing on the phone calls, which we can understand. But at the same token, it's like, you got to feel for the people on the other end kind of thing. So we're kind of saying kindness kills. It's like, you know what, there's a human element and a human component to all this. So even if your payment didn't go through today, it will get reimbursed. And if there was any NSF charges, they will cover those. So that was kind of one of the big messages that came out this morning. They're doing the best they can kind of thing. One other question I had was about a gentleman asked me last weekend, what if we've put a mortgage into deferral mode and they've got the extra cash and they just want to even make the payments like on the interest to keep it current kind of thing, so that you're not accumulating, so it's not adding to the principal. My initial thought was no, I don't think that's something you can do. Reason being is that if the computer system is now set up to be in deferral mode, and now all of a sudden a payment gets attached to it, I think it'll snap it out of deferral mode and put it into regular repayments automatically. But what I've discovered this week is it's case by case kind of thing. So whether you use that as a principal reduction kind of thing, or whether you just leave it and then just do one lump sum just before it comes out of principal, I think that's going to be the way around it. But if you have any questions, we're kind of saying talk to the lenders, because they're all handling it different, and their systems are all set up differently too. The nice thing I've seen this week is that lenders are now trying to make it a little bit easier. My mortgage personally is with Scotia, and they actually just sent out an email yesterday saying if you've got any sort of Scotia payments, whether that be a mortgage, a car loan, any sort of debt, any sort of payments, you fill in the form, it automatically, you just click a few links and it will defer your mortgage payments. I actually had a client text me yesterday saying it was the easiest process. She just clicked a few buttons and it happened. TD has, they've cut their credit card interest rates by up to 50%. That one I thought was kind of cool, actually. And then First National is also sending out a letter as well. So there's a few different lenders that are trying to make things a little bit easier for everybody. So if anybody's on the call that has some questions in regards to their lenders and wants some of the information, I can share that with you afterwards too. So that was kind of my recap.
Amazing. CIBC is doing the same thing with credit cards. So
oh, they do. I haven't seen that one yet. I think
yeah.
they're all doing that, but the only one that's come across my desk so far is TD kind of thing. So it is cool to see that everybody is stepping up kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to see what happens at the end of this, where it is, right? So I know, and everybody has lowered their prime rate kind of thing. So all the lenders are now down to the 2.45. So which is good. So yeah, so we're good. So that is my recap. So where do we begin now? So now this is me introducing Bill to everybody who's on here, who's on with us this morning. So Bill, you and I, how long have I known you? 6-7 years maybe?
Yeah, you know what? I laugh. So I go through the same struggle when I try and figure out how long I've been in business on my own. Because I'm like, it's only been a year or two. And then I started thinking about it. I think, well, no, wait a sec. It's
a little bit longer.
Yeah. So it's 6-7 years. So
yeah. So that I did the sidestep out of BNG. That's our networking group we're at. And then I've been back, I think about a year and a half to 2 years or two. And I don't even know. It's been a good comeback. But we've done this a lot together in terms of we chat every week, we chat in between and such. So when I put it out to you last week saying, hey, I'm doing webinars, are you interested? Yeah, you were like, yeah, absolutely, which I thought was awesome. So thanks for your time. I know,
absolutely.
That's just who you are. I know. And the best thing is you talk like I talk, like you talk in layman's terms. So because I'm a numbers girl, I do this for a living, but when it gets to the accounting, it's like French to me.
Right.
So when I talk to you, I'm like, oh, that's it. Like you speak like I totally understand it. So I appreciate you coming on and helping to explain it to everybody else too. All right. So floor is yours, my friends.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I guess there's an introduction. I'm a partner with a company called Deeth and Company I've got 2 offices, one in downtown Burlington, second in Port Credit. Um, I guess I'm probably the tax partner quasi more than anyone else in the firm. So I've done the in-depth tax course. I enjoy reading legislation and stuff. So this is, in terms of my enjoyment, this is kind of what I like to do, strangely enough.
That's awesome. I get it. I get it. Yeah.
So, so the last probably 2 weeks has been very trying. Much like you've experienced with clients, it's so much uncertainty, right? And there really weren't, you referenced departments that there was no, when you look at the legislation process, it takes them 6 or 8 months usually to write legislation. They're trying to do it in a night.
Right.
So it really is. And with reduced staff and with not as many people around and all kinds of outside pressure to get it done quickly. So, I've tried to slow my communications out to people just based on actual government releases, right? So what we've seen is there's a lot of announcements. I think everybody knows what time every politician is on in the day. So
actually, I logged in the other day. I never do. I'm like,
no?
I need to know what's going on. I know. I hear you.
So I laugh. So my wife is home right now as well. So I always tell her, I'm like, give me a heads up if any of Justin Trudeau, the ministers that sit then at noon and do the press conference, or Doug Ford, make any references that are business specific, because then I know that the next 3 or 4 hours are going to be phone calls from clients, and that's fine. That's not, they're panicked, and a lot of them are experiencing tremendous upheaval in their businesses. So, we're doing what we can to help people navigate that as best we can. The tough part is much like you, there are these announcements that get made, and nobody's got departments ready to go. Nobody's had an opportunity to review the information. So we're trying to figure it out on the fly with people. So
absolutely.
But I enjoy that, right? I enjoy being able to take some of the stuff that comes out and pull it apart and get to the bottom of it. And I know we spoke before everybody came on about some of the gaps that we found and communications and stuff. So and surprisingly enough, much like you were saying with the lenders, the contacts that I have in government have been awesome in terms of getting back to us. Oftentimes don't know the answer right away, but take it on to the right people and get answers, and they're listening, right? We're getting movement on some of that, right? So
which I think is pretty cool.
So it's interesting times. So I know you had sent me
I sent you a few questions. I did, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So how about we'll kind of go through, I wrote it down here as well, right? Yeah. So then that way we can kind of hit on like because there's a little bit of everybody here, so which is awesome.
For sure.
That way, like in terms of say the employed client.
Yep.
Right. So my thing is, we just talked, like you said before everyone came on, what about the kids? Like let's go start young and work our way up.
For sure.
So like, cause Maya, she's been working, she'll be 18 this year, and she's been working for the last 3 years. Is she eligible for anything?
So if
she's not working.
So there's 2 things, that one directly, I guess, and one indirectly. So the first one that directly could impact her is that the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, which you're going to keep seeing as the CERB.
Yeah.
And that's the $2,000 a month payment that the federal government has spoken at length about. So if she is regularly working and she earned $5,000 anytime in the last 12 months, she'd be eligible to apply for it. The key to it is that you need to have 14 consecutive days of no earnings, no wages due to the COVID-19 outbreak. So if she's working for an employer who turns around and says, we're not able to open right now, we need to send you home, we're not paying you for 14 days, then she absolutely would be eligible to apply for that benefit and receive receive the $2,000 a month.
Is it a standard 2,000 that everyone's getting? Like, because she doesn't make that much money.
Yeah. So
no, she doesn't actually. She doesn't.
Yeah. No, as it's written, absolutely. So
wow.
So they don't have any sort of mechanism to income test it.
Okay.
And they don't. Right now there's no indication that it's going to be age tested or income tested or anything, right? So as long as you make that $5,000 in the previous 12 months and end up with with no earnings in those 14 days. So
right.
as long as you
So somebody who's gone from either 5,000 a month, or sorry, 5,000 a year up to like 60,000 a year, they're going to get the same amount of money.
up to
Is ultimately what's
600,000 a
happening.
year or whatever. Everybody qualifies for the same
Right.
amount.
Everyone's for the same amount. Okay.
Yep.
So it's across the board. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, well, that's
So,
good to know, actually.
and
then
so
that, okay. So you just answered like a few of my questions. So look at that.
yeah, well, and that is
Amazing.
so that, and the 14 days is, so it's, and what you're kind of referencing is a perfect example. So we've got a number of clients who, employ a whole whack of young people, and I'm sure Maya's not looking for 50 hours a week most of the time because she's doing school
exactly.
and doing. So they've got a lot of people who are working 8 or 10 hours a week, right? And if you're working 10 hours a week, it's $150 a year at $15 an hour, 140 or a week, and you multiply it out, she'll hit 5,000 for sure. But those employees are saying, well, I can come in and work 10 hours, make $140, or I can sit on my butt and do nothing and make $500.
I know.
So it is causing, it's one of the gaps that have been identified. It's causing some frustrations for employers. And what likely is going to happen is, in those situations, you're probably going to get 1 or 2 people who get the bulk of the hours, everybody else who gets told to stay at home.
Correct.
Right?
And that's what we've seen actually with some of her friends even, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Some of them are working the full times, and then there's some that are working like 4 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, there's some that parents are saying, no, you can't go to work.
And
because you don't know what's happening in the home life, right? Like they don't want anybody exposed.
Yep. Perfect segue too, right? And I was going to say the other condition in it is that you cannot voluntarily leave employment to qualify. So if you are somebody in that situation and mom and dad say, hey, we're not real comfortable with you interacting with the public right now, we don't want you working, and the employee voluntarily leaves, then they wouldn't qualify. So
it's okay. So when they're applying, is that a question in the application process?
Because I'm like, how do they know? Until tomorrow.
Was that? So, I didn't know that. Okay,
I would expect it will be.
Okay.
Now, like normally, like if you think about the like income replacement and the employment insurance program, it's usually conditional on the employer to identify why the relationship was severed. Right. So when we're filling out, when employers are filling out ROEs, they're saying, the person quit, or they were laid off, or they were, in this case, they originally were looking to use the EI program, and then they overwhelmed Service Canada in a matter of probably hours.
Like the same, on the same mechanism. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know, like the employers don't have a reporting obligation here, right? Okay. It's really up to the individual to say, I've not had income in these 14 days.
Right.
So, if they work out a deal with employers, like the reality is some employers are going to probably want to pare back their staff anyway. Right.
Yeah. So for sure.
There's probably an opportunity for them to have a conversation with a boss or something like that. But by the letter of the law, if they voluntarily leave, they won't qualify for it. So. Okay.
I wonder if it'll be something that'll come out later down the road. I imagine something will happen, right?
Yeah. So
probably. Okay. So let's go to the flip side then. Let's go to the employer.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So as we're saying, so I know something got announced last week. You and I chatted briefly about that at the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
Because that got announced on Monday, was it?
Which one? So there
was a few different ones for the sole or the incorporated.
Okay. So for wage subsidies,
client, right? The wage subsidy. There you go. Yep.
So there are two separate and distinct. So a lot of people originally thought, like the original announcement was about a 10% wage subsidy, which didn't get a whole lot of positive feedback initially, and then was
going to say that
subsequently replaced by the 75% wage subsidy. So they are both still there. I shouldn't even say they're both. The 10% wage subsidy is still there because it was the only one that was passed into legislation. The 75% wage subsidy, which has gotten the most airtime, has yet to have draft legislation released. So I think the expectation is that we'll probably see that Monday.
Okay.
Everybody was talking that most of the MPs have been recalled to Ottawa to get that legislation through the House. So on the 10% wage subsidy, essentially what it is, employers will qualify. Employers who continue to employ people are able to reduce or basically get a 10% credit for the wages they paid.
Okay.
in terms of a mechanism, they can take it off source deductions that are withheld and reduce the income tax and keep the money right away that way. It's a little bit more restrictive. You have to be a Canadian controlled private corporation, so which is a defined term in the Tax Act, and I won't bore everybody to pieces, but essentially a private Canadian corporation is really what it boils down to.
Would that be the likes of myself for talking?
Sorry?
Because I'm incorporated.
Yeah, so you would be a CCPC.
So that would be,
yep.
Okay.
There's other rules that kick in. They have to be small. So there's taxable
Okay.
capital rules, and there's a handful of things like that. So like a really, really big private corporation likely wouldn't qualify. They probably have too many resources and too many assets. But
Fair enough.
most small and medium-sized businesses, like if you look at the Canadian landscape, it would be almost all private Canadian businesses would qualify.
Okay.
So they get a 10% reduction, and those are really what it is, right? If you're a small Canadian business, you're going to qualify. You're going to be able to reduce they're going to credit you 10% of your wage costs. The 75% one, which was originally spoken about probably 10 days ago, like I think it was probably a week ago Friday, was a 75% wage subsidy. Most people just originally assumed that it would replace the 10% wage subsidy.
Okay.
And it would be simply a matter of changing 10% to 75%. Everything else would stay the same. And then it slowly trickled out through the week that wasn't in fact the case. So it's going to be a completely separate wage subsidy altogether. So where the 10% one involves employers reducing source deductions, this one is actually going to turn into a payment from the government. So what they're going to do is, and it's a little bit more restrictive to get into. So you have to have seen a 30% or greater reduction in your sales in the month of, so in this case, first one is March, and then there's a second qualifying period being May, and a third one being April, March, April, May. I'll get my months straight eventually. So it goes March, the month of March, the whole month of April, and then the whole month of May. So if your sales in the month of March have dropped by 30% or more year over year compared to 19, then the government will give you a subsidy where they'll pay 75% of your total wage costs between, I think it's March 15th and April 11th. And then if it goes down that 30% in April year over year, same thing from April 12th to May, and then it carries on from May and the May to June wages. We don't have a whole lot of detail in terms of what the application is going to look like. We know that the 30% reduction is there. We know that it is salary tested. So you have to have had a minimum of $50,000 in payroll the prior year, up to, I think it's $1 million is what the number is, but it's fairly significant. So again, really big business might not be able to qualify for it. I might be confusing programs. $50,000 at a minimum for sure. So if you have $50,000 or more in payroll wage expenses in the calendar year 2019, you can get into it if you meet the other qualifications.
So for that small business, so say they've only had, let's say 30,000 or 35 or 40,000 kind of thing, they're not going to qualify, right?
Correct. So.
Oh, and then actually, Vicky's just saying, should they apply once they reopen?
For that one, no. So that application will happen right away. So they are much like the CERB, and that's a really good question, and I'll kind of go down that path. So much like the CERB, where they've encouraged everybody to make sure that they have access to CRA's My Account, they're also encouraging businesses to make sure they have access to CRA's My Business Account. So you can, for individuals, a lot of people have it for individuals. It's not quite as common for businesses, but you can, for an individual, use your social insurance number, gain access to CRA's account. A lot of people did it probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago when it was all over the news that you can go back and check and see if you have outstanding checks that were never cashed.
I didn't hear that one. Okay. I already have it, so I'm okay. Oh,
yeah, so that's...
I think I should check.
Yeah, you should. So absolutely, for sure, there's potentially free money sitting there for a lot of people.
Right on.
But if you can gain access to CRA's My Account for individuals, that's how the application for the CERB will go. There is a CRA My Business Account that drives off your business number as opposed to your social insurance number. And it sounds like that you'll need access to that in order to apply for the wage subsidy. So there is some cash flow timing issues associated with it, which is one of the things that I know has been brought up, where you still got to pay the employees, right? But we don't know when the payments from government are going to come. So for businesses whose sales have dried up or who have experienced significant losses,
like for the storefronts that business had to close, right?
Yeah.
Like the hairdressers kind of thing. Like they had to close, the RMTs, the chiropractors,
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
Yep.
But is that where a majority of the people were actually laying off their staff so they could collect different benefits, or what would have been the
So a
case by
lot
case? What was the better option?
like between these two,
Yeah,
like being this,
I know, right?
it really depends, right? So,
Okay.
and we've had this conversation, like a lot of it is case by case. We've had this conversation with clients. If you have continuing work that they can do, then you're getting like, yeah, they might not be as productive. Yeah, they might not be as efficient, but if there's stuff that they can do, the government is going to pay 75% of it. So really your $20 an hour employee is really costing you probably 6 or 7 now. So if they're operating at half capacity, you're still further ahead. If there's nothing to do, so for a chiropractor, for,
like hairdressers, right?
clinics, hairdressers,
Yeah.
for you to continue paying staff, if certainly there's soft value to it, right? In terms of future stuff. And, we talk about being employer of choice. We talk about, really trying to retain good staff. So if you're a business like that, that's flush with cash, there's a goodwill component to, ensuring that your staff are getting $1,000 a week instead of 500 if you can afford it. Right. But, it's
not always the case.
Yeah. From a pure business standpoint, it's tough to justify. Right.
Right.
So,
oh, for sure. Right. For sure.
Yeah. So it really, it's a case by case basis, right?
Okay.
I've been telling even my clients, I'm sending some of these communications out, and I'm just saying, if you want to share this with your network, great. Tell them to go to their accountants. It's going to drive questions on their end.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like you're giving like you actually sent that to me on Friday. Kind of. So we've got the basics, and then I can share that out too, right? Which is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've got friends who run small practices where it's just them or them and one employee, and I've been sending all my stuff to them too, right? And trying to get information out there. So
that puts us to that sole proprietor who's not incorporated.
Right.
Right. So what bucket are they falling in? Because I think that's kind of like the hidden bucket, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the missing bucket. That's what so whether that's the sole proprietor or the commission salesperson, like say the realtors, they're in this bucket that we don't really know, right?
And so they should, so they won't be able to get into the wage subsidy, right? Because even as a sole proprietor, if you have, and I shouldn't say that. So if you're a sole proprietor and you meet all the other conditions and you have employees, your employees can get into the 75% wage subsidy. But they can't. So in theory, they shouldn't be on payroll themselves, right? Okay. They just get whatever the profit is at the end of the year. So for them, the only real option is to get into the $2,000 a month, the CERD one. But again, it's gray, right? Like it's easy if we speak to Maya, right? If Maya doesn't go to work for 14 days, Maya gets no payment. That's the end of it.
Right.
For a sole proprietor, if you don't work for 12 days, and then all of a sudden on day 13, an employee or a customer who owed you money pays you, is that
re-triggering it, right? And I was just thinking of that for, say, a realtor kind of thing. So maybe it's nothing's happening right now because, as we know, the market slowed down. But what happens for that closing that they've now got on, let's say, April 15th? Did that just re-trigger them? Like how does that? How is that going to impact them?
That's a great question in all these programs. And unfortunately, I don't know that we know yet.
That's what I thought.
There's a lot of businesses where the sales trail the activity, right? So
exactly,
the lack of activity that those people are going to see in March, in April, in May isn't going to impact their revenue, right? Really until May, June, July, August, right? So there isn't a mechanism right now to necessarily fix that, right? But there are a lot of businesses where, they're still operating and firing from a revenue point of view, and even sometimes from an activity point of view, they're still firing full tilt right now, but they're not continuously throwing stuff into the hopper. So their slowdown, like they know they're going to slow down because they're not getting that new activity. They know their slowdown's coming, but it's not going to be till June or July or August. So
exactly. So is it one of those? Is that what? So it's almost like, is that when they apply? But then you hate doing that because then they're drawing up the reserve, right? Yeah. It's like what a catch-22.
And a lot of these programs are time sensitive, right? So the 75% wage subsidy right now only runs till wages at the beginning of June. So if all of a sudden their
Okay.
slowdown hits June 1st, well,
Yeah.
the three qualification periods are March, April, May. So if they're flat, and all of a sudden in
Right.
June drop 80%, as it sits right now, there's no mechanism for relief. So,
Okay. So this is one of those case by case scenarios too, right? So it
right.
said they're going to probably have to reevaluate as we go.
Right.
Oh,
So,
so interesting.
yep.
So what do we know about? So I don't think anything's changed for anybody who's getting their like CPP or OAS or disabilities. That's all status quo. Yes.
Correct.
There's
Correct.
no changes there. But what did I hear something about child tax credit? Was that going up?
Yep. So
Okay.
there's going to be so anybody who qualifies for the GST credit will
Okay.
see an enhancement to that.
Ah.
So, and I'm just looking at my own notes here. So the CCB, which is the Canada Child Benefit, has temporarily been increased for this year by $300. So anybody who does get that will start to see an increase in those payments.
300 per month or
It just says,
300?
I think it's
300.
$300
Yeah.
per
I'm thinking
year.
that's kind of high. Okay.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
it's $300 per year. So they haven't detailed it, but generally when they talk about payments, they talk about annualized.
Okay.
Um,
Gotcha. Okay.
and there's going to be a special one-time payment of GST credit
Okay.
for, and again, they haven't specifically said what this is, but for low and moderate income families.
Yep.
And that apparently is supposed to flow now this month, I think is what they've targeted. So anybody
Okay.
who qualifies for that will also be able to get access to those. So
Okay.
there's another one in Ontario for parents of children up to 12. So I think it's actually going to be, and again, I haven't seen the legislation come out. I would
Okay.
expect the way it's worded, it's probably children who are 11 years old and below will
Yeah.
qualify for a one-time payment of, I think it's $200. So,
Okay. So that's what, yeah, that's like I know there's a few things I've been seeing through social media, right? It's like the single moms that are now, they got to work from home and now there's no childcare kind of
right.
thing. So it's like, eesh, yeah, what a trickle effect, right? It's just
Absolutely.
kind of crazy along the way. So with all of this and all the money that's being given out based on all these incentives, what do you think? This is just a personal thing, because I know you don't have a magic ball. Well, maybe
I
you do. I
do.
don't know.
It's just right
Kind
over
of,
my.
you do. It's right behind you. Right on. Right
It's
on.
just, it's always wrong. That's the problem.
Oh, so okay. We need a magic eight ball
So
then. There you go. All right. Like, what do you think is going to be the impact on this? Like in terms of going forward with taxes and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's got to get repaid. Like, because we know we're going into debt, but I know the world is. Like, it's not just us, right? But what
right.
do you like? What's your gut?
So it's going to be an interesting few years, especially without political stability, right? So we're in a minority government. So minority
Gotcha.
governments tend to spend a little bit more than normal anyways in an effort to keep
Okay.
everybody happy, right? So
Right.
you'll often find that the governing party will make concessions to other parties in terms of spending in order to buy their votes on, budget passes and things like that. There was already a lot of concern in Canada that for the first time in I think it was 30 years, they were going to run a structural deficit this year.
Okay.
So essentially, you often hear that governments will run deficits. Often, when they run deficits, they have the revenues that come in being tax. They have all of their program spending being their expenses. That number will still be positive, but they
Okay.
don't have enough left over to make all their interest payments. So that's usually what a deficit is that it's the negative is created by the interest payments on the debt. A structural
Gotcha.
deficit is
Okay.
where the actual revenues in aren't like, or the expenses out actually exceed the revenues in. So they're not
Okay.
even bringing enough money in to cover their spending before they cover their interest. So there was grumblings that we were already looking at that for this fiscal year.
And then okay.
Before we started, and like they've got you right before we started spending billions. So you've made a very good point, right? It's kind of like the mortgage deferrals and all that, where like sometimes you need to do this, but you're
What's the
probably looking at
impact?
some lean times ahead as a result.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know.
There's a lot of talk that there's going to be a push away from globalization. You're going to see a lot of countries try and nationalize a little bit more. And as that happens, like, one of the questions is always, well, who loans money to government, right? So if the government of Canada needs money, where does it come
Yeah.
from?
Where do they go? Right. Yeah.
And it's often from other countries that have excess and things like that, and financial institutions, and a lot of them are outside of the country, right? So
Right.
if you see, more of a push to nationalization, if China holds Canadian debt and Canada starts to put trade pressure on China, what do they do as debt holders? It's going to be an interesting time. I think we're going to see, I think we'll probably see a bit of a slowdown on some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Selfishly, as somebody who works with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses that are very, very localized,
Yeah.
I hope we see a huge push of, people understanding that, maybe it's better that I pay $2 or $3 more at the corner store than
Agreed.
it is for me to, run up the street to Walmart and get something that's come from China, and even a lot of our big retailers, right? So,
Yep.
if you go into, like, we all think of Canadian Tire and get a little bit of national pride, but if you wander through Canadian Tire, a lot of their stuff comes from China, right? So it'll be interesting to see if manufacturing comes back here a little bit more.
Well, that was the big thing, that, because I actually, as you were talking about listening, I listened to Doug Ford on Friday, and that was one of the biggest things that he had said, right? It's like, you know what? It's like Canada, Ontario won't be put in this position again because we have so much here.
Yeah.
Why are we not paying that little bit more?
Yeah.
And as much as, we're going into lean times, I think you'd like to think that this is the time where you keep it at home, you spend a few more bucks, and then it gets more jobs too, right?
For sure. And I think on that, and we haven't talked about it here because it's probably not relevant, but there's some very specialized tax credits that have come out, specifically targeted to manufacturers and helping them retool, and people who were building in other industries who are going to be able to, with any luck, get capacity to build, whether it's PPE that you keep hearing about, or ventilators, or so there's a lot of money that is being directed into those activities.
Okay.
And I mean, I think it's a testament to how strong and robust our industries are here, that,
Agreed.
Companies who manufactured auto parts 6 weeks ago are looking to be able to be online and building ventilators in a week or two.
Right. Like that's huge. Absolutely.
You look in Burlington at how, they've in a very short period of time been able to throw up a temporary hospital next to Joe Brandt, where they're putting an extra 100 beds in. Like, we're pretty resourceful. And,
Agreed.
It might cost a little bit of money, but, and it might be a little bit more expensive in the long run, but,
right.
or sorry, it might be a little more expensive in the short run for you to buy
in the short run. Yeah.
To buy something made in Canada, but, you're helping to, like, those companies are going to pay taxes here, right? They're going to, it's very, and I think your client base is similar to mine, right? Like,
it is, yes.
And we've got a couple of very, very large clients in our practice, and you know what, they could pick up and move their operations to, the United States or to Mexico or wherever else, in 6 weeks. And, they've got the resources and the capital to do that, but small, medium-sized business doesn't, right? They're very landlocked and tied to their communities, and, they pay taxes and they spend money, and so that's my hope, is that we see a little bit more of an uptick in the local economy, and hopefully everybody makes a little bit more money and pays a little bit more taxes, and we get through it. So
absolutely, that's always a good part, when we got to pay more tax, right? Because then we are making more money. I know, it's a catch-22. I know, exactly. So that means we're all good there.
Right.
I think this, you know what, this is awesome. I don't think there's I think we kind of oh no, I did write this down. That poor client that went self-employed in 2019.
Yep.
Haven't filed a tax return, kind of thing.
Right.
So I was thinking about that. It's like, so they've opened a new business, or they just, they ventured out, whether it's incorporated or sole proprietorship, no tax return filed. So where do they fall? Is that going to be the same, just 14 days, no income?
Yeah.
And they get that $2,000 a month?
Yeah. So the good news is accountants have been deemed an essential service again. So we're all still working, so they can get out and get their tax returns filed. But
there's a delay on that too, remind me.
They likely move into that CERB, right? So, just because they don't, a new business like that likely hasn't put them themselves on payroll if they're incorporated.
That's the issue, right? Yeah, they're not taking anything out of it because it's new.
Right, and if they're a sole proprietor, they're likely, I mean, there's no revenue test for the $2,000 a month payment. So I would expect that their business has probably come grinding to a halt if they're new anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
So they're likely qualifying for that one. So
okay. So there we go. Yeah, I think that was it. Did we miss
Yeah.
anything? Does anybody have any questions even?
On a high level, and I'll pick the questions as I go here. So
Yeah.
on a high level, they have, they've extended tax filing deadlines. So almost everything's been extended out to at least the 1st of June. Payments have been extended out to August 31st,
Yep.
September 1st. So there's that. In our world, we're talking to clients about cash flow, right? So it's really about preserving cash flow right now. The other, so those are out there for pensioners. The only thing they've really done for anybody, in that kind of age category is they've adjusted the minimum RIF withdrawals. So the minimum you have to take out of your RIF this year has been reduced by 25% just to compensate for the downturn in the market.
Yeah.
And then for businesses and installments and stuff, right? So if you have clients that are making installments, and that's a lot of the small businesses and sole proprietors, all of those have been deferred out through the year.
They said, because actually I did before just all this, of course I got my notice about my installments, but they're probably going to send something out, I'm assuming, or it'll be probably in our, okay.
Yeah, you just go make the payment. They won't charge you interest or penalties.
They won't charge. Okay, so, there you go. Because I know Boyd has till June 15th to file, correct?
Yeah, and so it's the same. They haven't extended.
So it was the employed client, like our regular taxes. Okay, that's what got put out to June 1st. Okay.
And again, that's a catch-22, right? Lots of Canadians get tax refunds. So, it's great that you get it extended, but if you've experienced any kind of loss of employment or reduction of employment or any of those kind of things, and you're sitting on a tax refund, well, you want it, right? So
right.
It's great that it's extended, but if they owe you money, you still want to get on it and get it filed and get it
get it back.
So
right.
The other thing for businesses, and I won't deep dive it too much, but there's the Canadian Emergency Business Account, which is that $40,000 interest-free line of credit.
Yes, let's talk about that. We talked about that briefly. Yep. Yes.
So for any business owners, you have the ability through your primary checking account to apply for that. It's essentially up to a $40,000 line of credit that's going to be backed by the government. 0% interest for a period of time to start. And if you repay it by a certain date, they'll what's the word? They'll give you 25% of it back. Forgive it.
There you go. I knew it was, yes, exactly. So, yeah. And then if you don't, I think because I got an email from TD on that actually, and it was saying they would term it out over 3 years.
Yep.
I think was it December 2021 or December 2020? I just remember, I forget the timeline.
Yeah, so it'll be a line of credit till December 31st, 2020. At that point, it'll flip into a 5-year term loan.
Okay.
And I think it's 0% interest. Don't quote me on these because I don't remember exactly, but I think it's 0% on the first year. And I think it only goes up to 5% after that.
Okay, that's what I did get it from TD. So I think because I knew something about December of 2021. So that's good.
Yeah. So if you pay it, I think that's what it is. So I think if you pay it off by December 2021, they'll forgive 25% of the debt. So
okay. So that is good. So it's going to be a matter of talking to your bank and then finding out how to qualify for that.
Absolutely. So
yeah, because I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know what the rules around that'll be, kind of thing. So I deal with Tracy. I deal with Tracy at TD, so I'll ask her.
Most of the banks have pushed this online in terms of the application. So
that makes sense.
My expectation and what we've seen in terms of a lot of the stuff that's coming out of government is they're going to approve it first and ask questions later. So where a lot of the time in these programs, you end up stuck kind of waiting.
Right.
Everything that we're seeing is that they're going to really try and flow the cash out. And if people have applied incorrectly and don't qualify, they'll deal with clawing it back down the road. So,
which I think that totally makes sense. Even I think coming down to what we're talking about applying, right? It's like, how do they monitor that? I think that's what it'll be too. And it'll all be based on probably your tax return or payroll remittance or something. Something's going to come out, right? That it's going to get flagged.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same kind of deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. So did you see the question? Did you see the question on your end?
I see someone going through. Yep. So.
Yep. Okay.
Comment on any programs for self-employed individuals, perhaps folks who are still working, but maybe at a reduced amount of income.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind of gaps in the CERB legislation right now, is that there are a number of people who are going to experience a significant reduction in income without getting to the 0 and 14 days. And right now there isn't a whole lot of anything for them. The other one that I brought up that I'm hoping they fix is there's a lot of people who will work multiple part-time jobs, right? So you'll get people who might have 3
Right.
part-time jobs where one of them is primary, right? You'll get somebody who's working one job that might be 30 hours a week and have 1 or 2 other ones where they're picking up, 5 to 8 hours a week to get by.
Yeah.
Restaurant service is a perfect example. You get a lot of them who work in different establishments. And if the one where the primary one that's 30 hours a week says, no, we're shutting the doors. So now they go down to 0. One of their 2 secondary ones does the same thing and they lose, 8 hours there, but they continue on with the 5-hour-a-week job and that restaurant doesn't want to close and they can't get more hours. That person doesn't get into the CERB because they still have income in that 14-day period, right? So in spite of the fact that their wages might have gone from, $1,200 a week to $100, they still have no ability to get into this. So,
and then you can't voluntarily not do it to get the benefits because then
correct.
you don't fall into the category.
Yeah, because as soon as
look
you,
at that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is a gap, and certainly for people who are self-employed, it is one of the ones that we've seen so far is that there really isn't a whole lot to deal with those reductions, right? So there are deferrals of payment, there are those things, but there really isn't a whole lot else. So.
Okay. And then, wow. Okay. It'll be interesting for us to see on, I'm going to go forecasting because let's say how we just talked about the different incomes kind of thing. For a lot of clients, when you're working part-time with us, you need to have 2 years and we average out your income based on a 2 years. So come next year, because this year is such a crazy year, it'll be interesting to see how the lenders are going to visit that now. Are we going to use the prior kind of thing? Because that's going to have an impact on everybody, right? Like if you've made, like you just said, maybe you made 40 grand last year kind of thing, but this year now I'm only showing 10 kind of thing. Well, and all lenders take the lesser of the 2 in the years. So I'd be using 10,000 on an application. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually will impact as well.
Absolutely.
So many things to come out of this. So as much as there's a lot of good stuff happening kind of thing, like right now in terms of just helping cash flow wise, that is what I mean in terms of the good, obviously.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see how it gets handled after the fact.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that, and I'm hopeful that a lot of this is going to get fixed in the next probably 3 or 4 days. And we had spoke before too about Parliament's been, or all the MPs been recalled. So they have to get this legislation through the House in order for it to qualify and really to come into law and then to be able to do stuff with it.
Gotcha.
And I know that like there are a number of groups who are looking at this who are commenting on some of the gaps. So I would expect they'll probably fix some of these in the not so distant future is my hope. There's a question about, should I have my accountant or bookkeeper apply for these subsidies? It doesn't look right now like I don't have, so I can get into what's called represent a client as an accountant. I don't have the full access that you would have on my account or on my business account. And all of the information coming out of CRA has been to get, or coming out of the government has been, get access to my account, get access to my business account. So indirectly, your accountant or bookkeeper should be able to help you because you're going to need information off prior returns. So they should be able to help give you some guidance in terms of what numbers you need to put in. And it's random. It changes every time. They ask different security questions. So they should be able to support you getting access to it. Should be able to support your application of it. Likely can't actually file the application for you. And the only one that is probably not true of is the 10% wage subsidy. In the 10% wage subsidy, you're going to have to calculate off payroll deductions and things like that for your remittance in the 15th of this month. That one, your accountant, your bookkeeper absolutely should be able to help you with. So. Right.
Actually, you know what? My bookkeeper just did mine as well, kind of thing, because she just tells me what she's doing. I said, okay, thanks. Yeah,
that's
so
good.
It's the same kind of deal, right? Absolutely. And I did have a client actually text me last week saying, because I'm in the middle of doing a mortgage for her, so I have her tax return. So she's like, can you tell me line 150, line 135 for these years? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, because I had it. So I'm pretty sure that's what she was doing as well. So that's the beauty. I have a lot of people's tax returns kind of thing. So Yeah.
So everybody, Gail will get the application.
I've got
for you.
those
That's what she
too,
just
right? Yeah, if I
volunteered
got
for.
your tax return, I
So,
can get you.
And then the tax filing for corporations, the June 30th deadline hasn't been extended yet. And there's some weird stuff in the way it's flowing. So they haven't extended all the deadlines, but they've waived interest and penalties. So although the return itself is actually still going to be due on the 30th of June,
Okay.
if you don't pay your tax on time, there's no interest and penalties associated with it. So,
And if you don't, there's still not. I'm like,
yeah, and you know, that being said, we're encouraging people to try and stay on top of your filings, right?
right.
You're
For
always
sure,
you're going to
right?
have
For
to do
sure.
it.
Right.
And you know, we most accountants are going to have capacity to do it. Most of them are going to be working from home.
Yeah.
So get them if you can. You want to try and get them done as best you can, and just
Yeah.
it gives you an opportunity to kind of check the house and see where you're at, right? That usually happens.
Absolutely.
In the process too.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully get some advice in terms of what people are seeing and some guidance on how you move forward.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing. That was
Got
great.
all the questions?
I know we did pretty good. See, Bill, you didn't think you could chat for 45 minutes. Look at that. Almost an hour.
I knew I could chat for 45 minutes. If it's just me speaking, then we're in trouble.
Right, that's true too. I was like, we could chat. You and I could chat for hours, so that's awesome.
Absolutely.
No, I totally appreciate you coming on this morning. That was amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Helped answered. Yeah, you know what? We'll have to do this again.
For sure.
So I think it started something that I think it's just a matter of giving people information that we're looking for on a regular. Because this is, as you were saying, this is kind of fluid. It'll change. So maybe as time goes by, we'll hop on again on a Sunday morning and go from there.
Sounds like a deal.
Amazing. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks
Enjoy
a lot.
the rest of your day. Okay.
You
thanks,
as well.
Guys. All
See
right.
ya.
I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.